Did you know that the money poor people save in the bank actually loses its real value by the end of the year due to inflation? Meanwhile, the wealthy buy things that make money for them even while they sleep. 95% of people work extremely hard and still struggle financially their entire lives, while the remaining 5% keep building wealth quietly and consistently. In this audiobook, we will uncover the psychological secrets behind that divide. Your money is shrinking. This is the first truth in the division between the mentality of the rich and the poor. A person can save cash all year, feel responsible, feel safe, feel disciplined, then discover that inflation quietly stole part of that money anyway. Meanwhile, someone else uses the same money to buy an asset that keeps paying them while they sleep. This is not luck. This is not talent. This is not some secret reserved for people born into better families. The truth is that most people struggle with money their entire lives because they were trained to earn it, not trained to build with it. 95% of people work hard, very hard. They wake up early, they stay late. They handle pressure, they survive bad bosses, rising costs, and constant uncertainty, yet they still feel financially cornered. The other 5% are not always working harder. They are working from a different mental framework. They think differently about assets, differently about time, differently about risk, differently about pleasure, differently about what money is for. I learnt this the hard way. I spent years in rooms full of high earners who looked successful from the outside and were quietly collapsing on the inside. Bigger salary, bigger stress, bigger car payment, bigger house, bigger image, no freedom, no control, no margin. I have seen this destroy people, not because they were lazy, because they were running the wrong system. The problem is not income, the problem is mindset, and mindset can be changed if you know how. 7 specific differences, applied one by one, starting from exactly where you are today. Chapter 1. The Financial Trap and the Power of Mindset. You were probably taught the same sentence I was taught. Work hard and you will be fine. It sounds noble. It sounds honest. It sounds like wisdom passed down from people who wanted the best for you. But a sentence can be sincere and still be incomplete. That sentence is incomplete. Hard work can keep you alive. Hard work can keep the lights on. Hard work can earn respect. But hard work by itself does not guarantee wealth. If it did, the most exhausted people in society would also be the richest. Look at the people who do the most physically punishing work on earth. Construction workers, farmers, factory workers, warehouse staff, nurses on double shifts, delivery drivers fighting traffic, weather and deadlines. Many of them work longer hours than corporate executives. Many of them push their bodies harder than investment bankers. Yet most of them do not become financially free. That should tell you something important. The issue is not effort alone. The issue is where effort flows and what structure surrounds it. Thomas J. Stanley wrote about this in The Millionaire Next Door. He found that many wealthy people did not look wealthy at all. They did not always drive luxury cars. They did not always live flashy lives. What separated them was not spectacle. It was behavior. It was restraint. It was systems. It was the quiet discipline of directing money toward ownership instead of appearances. That is the first crack in the story most people live inside. The truth is that income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays, grows, and keeps working after you stop. A person can earn a strong salary for 20 years and still have nothing durable to show for it if every dollar passes through their hands like water through an open drain. Another person can earn less, but if that person builds habits around saving, investing, and ownership, their life can look completely different 10 years later. This is where most people stop. They think the answer is more income. They tell themselves that once the salary rises, the stress will end. Once the bonus comes, the margin will appear. Once the promotion happens, the pressure will finally ease. But extra income without a new mindset usually creates a more expensive version of the same trap. The apartment gets nicer, the car gets newer, the dinners get fancier, the subscriptions multiply, the stress wears better clothes, but it is still stress. I watched this happen in corporate life for years. People celebrated raises they had already spent before the money arrived. Their lifestyle outpaced their judgment. Their calendar filled up. Their obligations hardened. Their identity got wrapped around a standard of living that demanded more and more from them. They were not building freedom. They were building a cage with premium materials. Time is the hardest limit in this equation. You can sell only so many hours. You can work earlier. You can stay later. You can stack meetings, answer messages at midnight, take weekend calls, and sacrifice sleep. But the ceiling remains. You still get 1 day at a time, 24 hours, no more. This ceiling is the same for everyone. The poor have it. The rich have it. The difference is that the poor are usually forced to sell more of it to survive, while the rich learn to separate income from their direct presence. That shift begins in the mind, long before it appears in the bank account. Every financial result starts as a private thought, a thought about what you deserve, a thought about what is possible, a thought about whether money is meant to be spent, protected, multiplied, or hidden. You buy with a mindset. You borrow with a mindset. You save with a mindset. You avoid learning with a mindset. You delay action with a mindset. Before money moves in your account, it moves in your head. That is why two people with the same paycheck can end up living in different realities. One spends first and reacts later. One invests first and adjusts later. One uses money to relieve emotion. One uses money to build structure. One wants comfort now. One wants power later. One sees salary as the finish line. One sees salary as raw material, not theory, lived experience. When I burnt out at 35, I had already seen what happens when a person confuses income with progress. I had money coming in, I had status on paper, I had external proof that I was doing well, but I had not built enough internal architecture. I had not asked hard enough questions about what my money was doing when I was not looking. That was the humiliation. Not that I worked hard, that I worked hard inside a system that still left me exposed. So start with honesty, not fantasy, not excuses, not the comforting lie that more money alone will rescue you. Your current financial position is, in large part, the visible result of your invisible habits from the last 5 to 10 years, and your position 10 years from now will be shaped by the mindset you begin practicing now. The next truth is harsher. It is not just that people think badly about money. It is that they are trapped inside a cycle designed to keep them there. Chapter 2. The Rat Race and Its Reality. Picture a man named James. He wakes up before sunrise. He checks his phone before his feet touch the floor. He commutes, he works, he absorbs pressure all day. He comes home tired enough to say he is grateful for the work and too tired to ask what the work is actually building. At the end of the month, his salary arrives. For a brief moment he feels relief. Then the money starts disappearing. Rent, loan payment, utilities, school fees, groceries, fuel, insurance, a small emergency he did not plan for, a card balance he meant to clear. By the last week of the month, the relief is gone. He is surviving until the next deposit. Then it happens again, and again, and again. That is the rat race. Not just working hard inside a loop that resets every month and produces motion without progress. A wheel can spin at full speed and still remain in the same place. That is the structure millions of people live inside without naming it clearly enough to escape it. The truth is that the rat race is not powered by low income alone. It is powered by a sequence: earn, spend all, borrow when needed, earn again. Each cycle trains the mind to focus only on the next bill, the next deadline, the next immediate fire. Long-term thinking gets pushed out by short-term survival, and when the mind lives in constant reaction, wealth building never gets enough space to begin. I have seen intelligent people spend 20 years in this loop, while still believing the next raise would save them. This is where most people stop. They assume the cage is made of salary size. Often it is made of behavior. A raise does not break the cycle if every increase in income is matched by an increase in spending. That is lifestyle inflation, one of the quietest traps in modern financial life. A higher salary often leads to a bigger apartment, a newer car, a more expensive phone plan, better restaurants, more subscription services, more social pressure, and more debt, all justified by the phrase, "I can afford it now." But being able to make the monthly payment is not the same as being able to afford the life. Real affordability includes freedom, margin, and the ability to stop. Most people never calculate those costs. Then inflation adds another layer of erosion. In recent years, people around the world watched food, rent, fuel, and daily essentials rise faster than their sense of safety. Money sitting still looked responsible, but its purchasing power weakened. You could open a bank app and see the same number while the real value behind that number was shrinking. The balance stayed, the power declined. That is why passive saving without active investing can become a slow financial leak. Warren Buffett said it with brutal clarity. If you do not find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. That sentence is not about ambition. It is about mechanics. If your income stops the moment you stop, then your life remains tied to your continued labor. If an asset keeps producing after your effort ends, then you have started to separate survival from constant exertion. That separation is the foundation of freedom. I want you to notice something else about the rat race. Most people inside it do not realize they are inside it. They think stress is normal. They think debt is normal. They think having almost nothing left at the end of the month is normal. They think needing 2 more raises, 1 more refinance, 1 more side hustle, 1 more miracle is normal. Recognition matters because you cannot exit a pattern you refuse to name. In 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed and the financial system shook, millions of people learned a violent lesson about fragility. Jobs vanished, assets plunged, confidence disappeared. People who thought they were stable discovered that their entire financial life depended on conditions they did not control. The event was global, but the lesson was personal. If your system has no margin, one shock can expose everything. James is not fictional in the deeper sense. He is a composite of millions. Maybe he is you. Maybe he is someone you love. Maybe he is the version of you that smiles at work and feels dread in the grocery store. If so, I am not here to shame you. I am here to tell you something harder and more useful. Hard work will not free you from a cycle that was built around consumption, debt, and delayed awareness. Only a new framework will. So tonight, if you are serious, look at the last 3 months, not emotionally, mechanically. What percentage of your income went to saving or investing? What percentage went to consumption? What percentage went to payments for things that are already gone? The number will tell the truth even if your pride resists it. Not theory, lived experience. The first shift begins with one question so simple that most people avoid it. What you own. Does it pay you or does it drain you? Chapter 3. Asset versus liability. This is the line that changes everything. Not your title, not your salary, not your neighborhood. This line. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out. Once you truly understand that distinction, your financial life stops feeling mysterious. It becomes measurable, clean, honest, sometimes painful, but clear. Robert Kiyosaki built an entire financial education movement around this point, and he was right to do it. The rich acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities they think are assets. That sentence offends people because it attacks the stories they tell themselves. But offense does not make it false. A car that loses value and costs you monthly payments is not an investment because you love it. A phone that becomes outdated while its financing plan continues is not an investment because it looks premium. A closet full of status items is not wealth because it photographs well. The truth is that many people spend their best earning years buying symbols of progress instead of engines of progress. An asset generates cash flow, grows in value, or both. Rental property can do that. Dividend-producing shares can do that. A business that runs without your daily presence can do that. A book can do that. A licensing agreement can do that. A digital course can do that. Intellectual property can do that. An asset may require work to create, attention to maintain, and skill to choose wisely. But its defining trait is simple. It keeps working after the initial effort. A liability does the opposite. It asks for money. It consumes money. It creates obligations. Sometimes a liability is necessary. Housing costs money. Transportation costs money. Daily life has expenses. The issue is not whether all liabilities are evil. The issue is whether you are confusing them with wealth. That confusion is expensive. I learnt this the hard way when I watched people with high incomes build lives full of financial drains while calling themselves investors. I knew executives who upgraded cars every few years, treated expensive watches as financial strategy, and explained every consumption decision as though it were clever. Then a downturn came, a restructuring came, a bonus vanished. Suddenly all the objects they called assets revealed what they really were: monthly demands with polished surfaces. This is where most people stop. They assume an item is an asset because it is expensive. Price and productivity are not the same thing. Cost and value are not the same thing. Ownership and control are not the same thing. If something leaves your account every month, it is asking you to serve it. If something consistently sends money back to you, it is serving you. There is a reason financially disciplined people build what some call an asset column. They want more things that produce and fewer things that consume. This is not glamorous. It is not exciting to brag about at dinner. Nobody claps when you quietly buy another income-producing instrument instead of upgrading your image. But applause is not the metric. Cash flow is the metric. Freedom is the metric. Think about a middle-class household with 2 solid incomes. The family buys a larger house than it can comfortably manage because the bank says the payment is possible. Then come furnishing costs, maintenance, taxes, insurance, repairs, upgrades, and the emotional desire to fill every room with proof of success. The house may be useful. It may even grow in value over time. But if the total burden consistently drains the household and prevents saving or investing, then functionally it behaves like a heavy liability in the season that matters most. Context matters, numbers matter. Emotion does not erase arithmetic. During the housing collapse that followed the 2008 financial crisis, millions of people learned that a home is not automatically wealth just because society says ownership equals success. If the financing is fragile, if the margin is thin, if the household is stretched, then one downturn can turn a symbol of stability into a pressure chamber. The truth is that every possession in your life is either helping your future or feeding on it. Some do both. Most people never sit down long enough to sort the list honestly. They just keep acquiring. So do the work. Write down everything you own, every major possession, every account, every debt, every financed item, every subscription that quietly leaves your bank each month. Put them in two columns: assets, liabilities. Then next to each one, ask the only question that matters. Does this put money in my pocket or take money out? Do not debate. Do not justify. Label it. I have seen this destroy people because the lie becomes identity. A man calls himself successful because the driveway looks expensive, while the balance sheet quietly suffocates him. A woman calls herself secure because her wardrobe looks polished, even though she has no invested cushion at all. The outer signal replaces inner truth. And eventually life sends a bill that image cannot pay. When you stop lying to yourself about assets and liabilities, you stop being easy to trap. Your choices sharpen, your spending becomes more deliberate, your respect for capital changes. You begin to see money not as a way to display your life, but as a way to design it. And once that design begins, the next battle appears immediately. It is not a math problem first, it is a craving problem. Chapter 4. Instant gratification versus delayed gratification. A large part of financial struggle has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with the inability to endure a small discomfort now, in exchange for a larger reward later. That is the brutal simplicity of it. Wealth often asks you to tolerate the ordinary, to wait, to postpone, to deny yourself applause in the present so your future has more power. Walter Mischel's marshmallow test at Stanford became famous for a reason. Children were offered one marshmallow now, or two if they waited. Years later, the children who managed to delay gratification tended to perform better across several areas of life. The study has been debated and refined over time, as good research always is, but the core principle still matters. The ability to resist the immediate pull of reward changes outcomes, not only in childhood, in money, in health, in attention, in relationships, in everything that compounds. The truth is that modern life is engineered against this discipline. You can buy with one tap, borrow in minutes, upgrade instantly, feed an impulse before your wiser mind has time to wake up. Advertising does not ask whether you need something, it asks how fast you can get it. Social media makes patience feel invisible, and consumption feel like identity. Everyone is performing comfort. Almost nobody is performing restraint. This is where most people stop. They say yes to the purchase because it feels like a small amount. A dinner here, a gadget there, a clothes order when stress gets high. A luxury they tell themselves they deserve after a hard week. The purchase is not always the issue. The pattern is. Money leaves in moments. Wealth is built in seasons. Compounding makes this difference merciless. $100 spent today is not only $100 gone. It is the growth that $100 could have produced over years if invested wisely. At 10% annual growth, money doubles roughly every 7 years by the rule of 72. That means many impulsive purchases are not costing you their sticker price. They are costing you future options, future margin, future ownership. I learnt this the hard way. In a world where high pressure made spending feel like relief, people told themselves they needed better experiences because the week was hard, better restaurants because the quarter was brutal, better travel because they earned it, better everything because they were tired. Exhaustion became the perfect salesman for instant gratification. There is nothing wrong with enjoying money. Let me make that clear. The goal is not to become emotionally dead. The goal is to become intentional. A wealthy mindset does not say never enjoy. It says decide consciously. It says know the cost. It says do not let emotion hold the wallet. It says ask what this purchase steals from the future before you ask what it gives the present. Warren Buffett said, do not save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving. That sentence sounds simple because truth usually does, but applying it means accepting short-term friction. It means being the person who waits, the person who plans, the person who does not need every desire to become a transaction. Try this the next time you feel the pull of a significant unplanned purchase. Wait 72 hours, not forever, just 72 hours. If the need is real, it will still be there. If it was emotional, the urgency will fade. That gap matters. It is where control returns. It is where identity begins to change. Daniel Kahneman's work on behavioral economics showed how irrational human beings can be under emotional pressure. People do not make financial decisions like calm calculators. They make them like creatures trying to avoid discomfort. That is why discipline matters so much. It protects you from the version of yourself that wants relief now and regrets later. The truth is that the wealthy are not always the ones who earn more. They are often people who can wait longer. They can wait for better opportunities. Wait before upgrading. Wait before reacting. Wait before rewarding themselves with things that weaken tomorrow. Not theory, lived experience. I have seen ordinary people build extraordinary stability simply because they learned not to give in to every craving. No fireworks, no dramatic moment, just repeated decisions to let impulse pass without becoming action. And I have seen people with every advantage sabotage themselves because they could not tolerate delay. Before your next major purchase, ask one question. If this money were invested instead, what could it become in 10 years? Not as guilt, as clarity. You may still choose the purchase, fine, but at least let the future speak before the present takes over. Because the next shift is where delayed gratification grows teeth. It stops being about what you resist and becomes about what you build. Chapter 5. Selling time versus building a system. If you stop working today, does your income stop tomorrow? Answer that without pride, without fear, without performance. Just answer it honestly. If the answer is yes, then you are selling time. That is active income. It may be respectable. It may be necessary. It may even pay well. But it is still bound to your presence. You show up, you earn, you stop. It stops. That structure has a ceiling built into it from the beginning. John the 500th. Rockefeller expressed the logic of leverage in a sentence that survived for good reason. He would rather earn 1% from 100 people's efforts than 100% from his own. That is not laziness. That is systems thinking. It is understood that one body can only do so much, but a properly built structure can outgrow the limits of a single body. The truth is that most people spend their best mental energy on managing tasks rather than building systems. They become excellent at surviving the week, excellent at handling the inbox, excellent at solving immediate problems, but they never step back long enough to ask what can keep producing after the work session ends. A system can be small. It can begin as something almost embarrassing in its simplicity. A digital product based on a skill you already have, a guide, a course, a consulting framework that can be delegated later, a small service business with processes documented clearly enough that someone else can help operate it, content that keeps generating revenue after it is published, royalties from intellectual property, dividend income from disciplined investing, rental income from a carefully chosen asset. The first system does not need to be glamorous. It needs to exist. This is where most people stop. They say they will build a system later, when they have more time. But the whole point of building a system is that time will never suddenly appear while you remain trapped inside labor that consumes all of it. You carve out the time. You protect it. You build tired if necessary. You build small if necessary, but you build. I learnt this the hard way because corporate life rewards competence inside the machine. If you are efficient, more flows to you. If you are dependable, more lands on your desk. If you are calm under pressure, people trust you with even more responsibility. It looks like progress. Sometimes it is. But if that competence never gets redirected into ownership, then all you have done is become more valuable to a system you do not control. Amazon is a powerful example of systems thinking, not because everyone should build a giant company, but because the logic is clear. Jeff Bezos did not personally package every order or drive every delivery. The value came from designing a structure that kept moving at scale. You do not need Amazon, you need the principle. Create something that can continue functioning beyond your direct moment-to-moment effort. The economic principle at work here is leverage. Leverage means using tools, technology, capital, processes, or other people's effort to extend what one person can produce. That can sound abstract until you feel it in your own life. The hour you spend creating something that can sell 100 times is fundamentally different from the hour you spend trading labor once and being done. There is a reason Buffett's statement about making money while you sleep lands so hard. It exposes dependence. It reveals whether your life is built only on motion or on structure. A passive income stream is never fully passive at the beginning. That is another lie people tell themselves. Systems require thought. They require setup. They require mistakes. They require revision. But once functioning, they can decouple your time from your income in ways a salary alone never will. Take stock of what you already know. What skill do you have that solves a problem? What process have you mastered that someone else still finds difficult? What experience have you paid for with years of effort that you could package and sell? Most people dismiss what they know because it feels ordinary to them. That is often where the opportunity is hiding. Familiarity makes value invisible, not theory, lived experience. I have watched people spend decades saying they had nothing to offer while sitting on skills others would gladly pay for. They did not fail because the opportunity was absent. They failed because they kept waiting for certainty. Wealth builders do not wait for certainty. They test, they measure, they improve, they let small systems teach them. So write down 3 things you know that could help someone else. Something practical, something clear, something real. Then ask what the smallest form this could take. Not the perfect business, the smallest first proof, a guide, a simple offer, a service, a tool, a piece of content, a framework. The truth is that selling time can fund your life, building systems can change it, and once you decide to build, another rule becomes non-negotiable. You cannot keep placing yourself last every month and expect ownership to appear. Chapter 6. Pay yourself first. Most people use the same sequence without ever questioning it. Money comes in, bills get paid, life happens. Something unexpected appears. A little spending feels justified because the month was hard. Then, if anything remains, some of it gets saved. Usually very little. Often nothing. That sequence keeps people trapped because it treats saving and investing like optional leftovers. But leftovers are what remain after appetite, habit, and pressure have already taken their share. Leftovers are not strategy. Leftovers are surrender. The wealthy reverse the order. Income arrives. A fixed percentage is allocated immediately to savings or investing. Then the person lives on what remains. This is pay yourself first. It sounds almost too simple to matter. It matters because it shifts identity. You stop treating your future like an afterthought and start treating it like a bill that must be paid. George S. Clason wrote, "A part of all you earn is yours to keep." That line survives because most people do the opposite. Every dollar is assigned outward. Rent takes some, debt takes some, impulse takes some, image takes some, entertainment takes some. The future gets whatever survived the attack. Then people act surprised when the future stays weak. The truth is that automation can save people from themselves. Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi showed with their Save More Tomorrow research that people save more successfully when the process is automatic and tied to future increases. Why? Because automation removes repeated emotional negotiation. If you have to decide every month whether to save, your tired self will eventually produce an excuse. If the transfer happens the moment income lands, discipline stops depending on your mood. This is where most people stop. They say they will start when they can afford a larger amount. But the amount is not the first victory, the habit is. A person who consistently saves 5% builds a stronger financial spine than someone who intends to save 20% someday, but never begins. The habit creates the identity. The identity later supports larger numbers. I learnt this the hard way because I watched high earners treat future security as something they would address after the next busy season, the next move, the next school payment, the next promotion. The moment never arrived. There was always another reason to delay. And delay, repeated long enough, becomes a lifestyle. Pay yourself first does not require some dramatic act of deprivation. It requires a deliberate relationship with reality. If 10% of your income vanishes into an account meant for investment before the rest of the month begins, your remaining spending must adjust. That adjustment may expose waste. Good. It may expose subscriptions you do not use, habits you never questioned, comforts that cost more than they give. Good. Clarity is not punishment. Compounding rewards early consistency with ruthless generosity. Money invested for 20 years behaves very differently from money invested for 10. Even modest monthly contributions can grow into meaningful capital if started early enough and maintained without interruption. That is why the wealthy do not obsess only over amount. They obsess over sequence and time. Think of this as a system of forced respect. You are telling your money where to go before the world tells it for you. You are declaring that ownership deserves priority over consumption. You are choosing to let your future self eat first, not theory, lived experience. I have seen people with ordinary incomes create impressive stability through this one reversal. No genius, no miracle stock pick, no inheritance. Just a fixed percentage moved first, every month, through good seasons and bad ones. The power came from consistency, not brilliance. Open a separate account if you must. Make it slightly inconvenient to access. Friction is useful when impulse is the enemy. Set the transfer on the day income arrives. If 10% feels impossible, start with 5, but start. The first act matters more than the ideal percentage. The truth is that saving after spending is a wish. Saving before spending is a system. And systems only protect you when you understand what you are doing. That brings us to the fear that keeps many people passive forever. Chapter 7. Fear versus financial literacy. Listen carefully. Fear is not always wisdom. Sometimes fear is ignorance wearing a serious face. I have heard the sentence 1,000 times. If I invest, I might lose everything. It sounds cautious. It sounds mature. It sounds like someone protecting themselves from danger. But often it means something else. It means I do not understand this well enough to move, so I will call my lack of understanding prudence. Warren Buffett said it plainly. Risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. That does not mean all investments are safe. It means ignorance magnifies danger. A person who signs papers they do not understand, buys assets they cannot explain, borrows at rates they never calculated, or chases tips from strangers is not being brave. They are being blind. Blindness is expensive. The truth is that many people are terrified of investing while feeling strangely comfortable with guaranteed erosion. They fear market volatility, but silently accept inflation. They fear a temporary decline in an asset they researched, yet they never fear leaving money idle while its real purchasing power shrinks year after year. They fear visible risk and ignore invisible risk. This is where most people stop. They treat learning as optional. They think financial literacy is for experts, bankers, traders, or rich people. It is not. It is basic adult infrastructure. If you earn, spend, borrow, save, or plan to retire one day, you are already in the financial system. Refusing to understand it does not exempt you. It only makes you easier to exploit. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed how strongly people react to loss. Loss aversion pushes human beings to avoid pain, even when the long-term costs of avoidance outweigh the benefits. That matters in money because ignorance feels safe in the short term. Doing nothing feels stable. Learning feels demanding. Investing feels uncertain. But over decades, the cost of not understanding debt, inflation, taxes, and compounding is enormous. Look at 2008 again. Some people lost fortunes because they took reckless risks. Others lost because they trusted instruments they never understood. Complexity can look sophisticated right before it becomes destructive. Financial literacy is not about becoming a market genius. It is about understanding enough to avoid obvious traps and recognize sound principles. You should know how compound interest works. You should know how inflation affects idle cash. You should know the difference between productive debt and destructive debt. You should know the basic structure of index funds, mutual funds, bond risk, diversification, and tax consequences in your country. Not every detail, enough to protect your life. I learnt this the hard way by watching accomplished professionals speak confidently about everything except their own money. They could lead teams, negotiate contracts, manage crises, and read complex business reports. But ask them what fees their investments charged, or how their debt actually worked, and the room fell silent. Intelligence in one area does not automatically transfer to money. It has to be developed. The wealthy do not eliminate risk. They calculate it. They reduce it through study. They seek understanding before exposure. A doctor is not fearless because surgery has no risk. A doctor is calmer because training replaced ignorance. Financial education can do the same thing for your decisions, so make a rule. Before any investment, consume at least 3 independent sources that explain it. Not hype, explanation. If you cannot describe the asset in plain language, if you cannot say how it makes money, what could hurt it, what fees exist, and what timeline it requires, then you do not understand it yet. Not theory, lived experience. I have seen this destroy people, not because the market was evil, because they were too embarrassed to admit what they did not know. Pride kept them uneducated. Urgency pushed them into action anyway. That combination is brutal. 15 to 20 minutes a day is enough to begin changing this. Read one chapter, one article from a credible source, one educational piece on how an instrument works. Build understanding the way builders lay brick, quietly, repeatedly, without drama. The truth is that ignorance is a luxury you can no longer afford. And once you start learning, you clearly see another divide. One group uses extra money to decorate life. The other uses it to reclaim time itself. Chapter 8. Buying things versus buying time. When most people begin earning more, they improve the visible parts of their lives first. Better apartment, better car, better clothes, better devices, better vacations, better proof that the grind is paying off. I understand the temptation. After years of pressure, comfort feels earned, status feels reassuring. External upgrades appear to be progress because they can be photographed, but the wealthy often spend on something less visible and far more powerful. They buy time, they hire help, they delegate repeatable tasks. They automate low-value work. They remove friction from their schedule. They pay to reduce noise so their attention can go where it matters most. That decision looks strange to people trapped in status thinking because it does not always produce a dramatic image. It produces space, space to think, space to build, space to learn, space to rest enough to make better decisions. The truth is that time is the only resource that can never be replenished once spent. Money lost can be earned again. Reputation damaged can sometimes be rebuilt. Physical strength can often be improved. But an hour gone is gone. Theophrastus said time is the most valuable thing a man can spend. He was right. Yet most people burn it on low-value obligations while spending money to look successful rather than to become effective. Economics has a name for this: opportunity cost. Every hour spent on a low-value task is an hour not spent on a higher-value one. If your time is worth far more than the task you are doing, then refusing to delegate can become a form of hidden poverty, not because you are lazy, because you are misallocating your highest value resource. This is where most people stop. They ask what something costs in money and never ask what it costs in hours, focus, energy, or missed opportunity. A cheaper option that drains 6 extra hours may not be cheaper at all. A task you insist on handling personally because you want control may be stealing time from the one activity that could change your future. I learnt this the hard way, because burnout is often just bad allocation, repeated until the nervous system breaks. People say they have no time to build assets, no time to learn, no time to plan, no time to think. Then you inspect the week and find endless hours lost to tasks that could have been automated, simplified, outsourced, or refused. Buying time is not only for the rich. It starts with awareness. It can be as simple as paying for a tool that automates repetitive work, hiring occasional help for tasks that exhaust you but do not require your unique skill, paying for delivery when it protects a critical work block, using software that compresses routine processes. The point is not luxury. The point is redeployment. And here is the crucial part. Freed time only becomes wealth if it is used well. If you buy time and then let it dissolve into distraction, you have simply changed the form of waste. Bought time must be reinvested into skill, into rest that restores real capacity, into building a system, into strengthening relationships that stabilize your life, into deep work that creates future value. A wealthy mindset asks a sharper question whenever income rises. Should this money buy a better image, or should it buy more control over my hours? Most people choose the image because it provides immediate social proof. Control is quieter, but quiet power is still power, not theory. Lived experience. I have seen people look wealthy even though they have no real control over their calendar. Every hour spoken for, every decision reactive, every spare minute consumed by maintenance. That is not freedom. That is a polished form of captivity. Calculate the value of your time. What hourly rate would make you willingly choose work over everything else you could be doing? Once you have that number, examine your week. Which tasks below that value are swallowing your life? Which can be delegated? Which can be automated? Which should simply be eliminated? This is where architecture becomes real. Wealth is not only what sits in an account, it is the degree of control you have over your days. And when your days begin to open, another question surfaces from deeper inside. Do you believe opportunity is limited and passing you by? Or do you believe value can still be created from where you stand now? Chapter 9. Scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. Two people see the same opportunity. One immediately thinks, this will probably fail. Someone else is already doing it. People like me do not win here. I will look foolish if I try. The other thinks, what can I learn? How did others make this work? What is the smallest version I can test? Even failure could teach me something useful. Same world, same opportunity, different internal operating system. That operating system matters more than most people realize. Scarcity mindset is not just about having less money. It is a way of interpreting reality. It says resources are limited. Success belongs to other kinds of people. Someone else's gain reduces your options. Mistakes permanently define you, and risk should be avoided because loss would confirm your worst fears. A person with this mindset can receive good advice and still do nothing because their internal filter turns every possibility into a threat. An abundance mindset does not mean fantasy. It does not mean pretending money grows on trees or acting careless. It means believing value can be created, skills can be learned, opportunity can be studied, and someone else's success can teach instead of threaten you. It means understanding that fear is not proof you should stop. The truth is that many financially trapped people are not just underfunded. They are psychologically cornered. They envy success instead of studying it. They dismiss wealth as luck because that explanation protects them from responsibility. They tell themselves rich people are a different species because that story removes the burden of change. This is where most people stop. They call their fear realism. They call their envy moral clarity. They call their resignation maturity. But when you strip away the language, what remains is often a deep refusal to imagine that they can learn, adapt, and act differently. Carol Dweck's work on mindset was focused on learning and performance, but the principle carries here as well. If you treat ability and possibility as fixed, your behavior narrows. If you treat them as developable, your behavior expands. Money follows behavior over time. So the belief underneath behavior matters enormously. I learned this the hard way because I spent years around people who sounded smart while living from contraction. Every conversation about money turned into a discussion of why something could not be done, why the system was unfair, why success was suspicious, why effort would probably be wasted. Some of those objections were partially true. Life is unfair, systems are uneven, luck exists, but none of that permanently changes the cost of living within scarcity. It makes the mind defensive, cynical, and passive. Henry Ford's line still lands because it exposes the mechanism. Whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you are right. Not because thoughts magically create money, because thoughts determine whether action begins at all. A person who assumes defeat usually stops before learning enough to become effective. Abundance thinking changes how you respond to other people's wins. Instead of envy, you feel curiosity. Instead of dismissal, you look for patterns. Instead of assuming they had some invisible advantage you could never have, you ask what behaviors, skills, structures, or decisions shaped the result. That shift sounds small. It is not. It changes what your brain searches for, and the brain tends to find what it is trained to look for. Gratitude helps here more than most people think. Not as soft self-help language, as neurological training. When you regularly notice what is working, what is present, what is available, your mind becomes less addicted to deficiency and more capable of seeing openings. Scarcity mind reads every room for threat. Abundance mind reads it for possibility, not theory, lived experience. I have seen this destroy people because scarcity becomes self-fulfilling. They hesitate, delay, resent, compare, withdraw, and then use the results of those behaviors as evidence that life offers nothing. The prison gets built from the inside. So watch your first internal reaction when someone else succeeds. Is it bitterness? Is it dismissal? Is it the urge to minimize what they did so you do not have to question your own inaction? If so, do not judge yourself. Study the reaction. That is your curriculum. 3 things each night. That is enough to start. 3 things that went well. 3 things already present in your life. 3 reasons the future is not closed. This is not childish. It is retraining. Because once the mind stops living only in lack, action becomes possible. And action, repeated daily, is what turns all 7 of these ideas into a life that actually changes. Chapter 10. Action Plan, Daily Routine, and Final Call. Knowing the 7 differences is not enough. Information has never been the main problem. Most people have heard good advice before. They have watched videos, saved quotes, read books, felt a flash of clarity, then returned to the same behavior by the end of the week. Inspiration is cheap. Repetition is costly. Results belong to repetition. That is why I want to end with structure. Philippa Lally's research on habit formation showed something important. Habits do not lock in overnight. They form through repetition, in stable contexts over time. That matters because many people expect one emotional moment to produce permanent change. It will not. You do not become financially disciplined because one sentence hit you hard. You become financially disciplined because a new action gets repeated long enough to become part of who you are. Why you to picture a woman named Sarah. She worked in a garment factory for modest pay. Every month felt tight, no dramatic waste, no luxury lifestyle, just constant pressure and very little margin. One day a colleague handed her a basic personal finance book. In it, she met two ideas for the first time with real clarity: asset versus liability. Pay yourself first, nothing exotic, nothing glamorous, just two truths placed in front of a person finally ready to see them. Sarah looked at her life honestly and realized almost everything she earned went into liabilities. She was not building anything that could help her later, so she started small, very small. She moved a few dollars each month into a separate account she made hard to access impulsively. After 6 months, she used that money to buy a modest income-producing item she could rent out locally. The income was tiny at first, but it was real. That mattered. It proved the principle. She kept saving, kept adding, kept reinvesting. Over several years, one small asset became several. Eventually, the monthly income from those assets exceeded what the factory had paid her. No magic, no overnight story, just architecture. One shift, then another. Then discipline strong enough to continue when life still felt ordinary. This is where most people stop. They try to fix everything at once. Budget, debt, investing, side income, mindset, routine, education, environment. Then the weight of total change breaks momentum before it begins. The truth is that you need one first move, not all final moves. One honest action performed today is more powerful than 10 admired ideas postponed again. So here is the daily structure. Each morning, give 10 minutes to financial education. Read a chapter. Read a credible article. Learn one principle: inflation, debt, index funds, cash flow, taxes, risk. Do not scroll random noise and call it research. Study something with shape. Each evening, record every expense, every one. Do not estimate. Do not round emotionally. Write it down and label it. Asset building or lifestyle, A or L. Visibility creates accountability. What you measure begins to change. Once a month, test one income idea at the smallest possible scale. Not the perfect business. A test, a service offer, a piece of content, a simple product, a skill packaged clearly. The goal is not instant success. The goal is proof, feedback, and data. Every 3 months, review your asset list and your liability list. Is one growing? Is the other shrinking? If not, the truth is in the numbers. Your identity may feel different, but your behavior has not caught up yet. Good. Better to know. I learnt this the hard way. Change feels noble when spoken. It feels inconvenient when scheduled. But scheduled action is what survives emotion. So choose your first move now. Maybe it is making the asset and liability list. Maybe it is automating 5% into a separate account. Maybe it is canceling a drain you kept excusing. Maybe it is reading for 10 minutes instead of scrolling for 40. Maybe it is building the smallest outline of a system that could one day earn without your constant presence. Do not wait for confidence. Confidence often arrives after evidence, not before it. Not theory, lived experience. The secret is not intensity, it is design, quiet design, repeated long enough that your days stop leaking your future away. Money does not usually disappear in one catastrophe. It disappears through unexamined habits. The truth is that most financial pain is built quietly. A weak structure can look stable for years. Income can hide foolishness for a long time. Status can hide fear. Busyness can hide avoidance. A full calendar can hide an empty future. A higher salary can hide the same old mindset. This is where most people stop. They confuse motion with progress. They confuse comfort with security. They confuse buying power with financial power. They confuse being admired with being free. The world will gladly sell you a better-looking cage. It will call the cage success. It will decorate the cage with upgrades. It will give the cage better lighting. It will still be a cage. You do not need more noise. You need more truth. You do not need perfect timing. You need clean decisions. You do not need to impress strangers. You need to stop betraying your future. I learnt this the hard way. Control begins the moment money stops being emotional anesthesia. Control begins when you can delay pleasure without feeling deprived. Control begins when you can distinguish between an asset and a drain. Control begins when you can sit with discomfort without buying relief. Control begins when your future gets paid before your appetite does. Control begins when you study what you once feared. Control begins when you protect your hours as they matter, because they do. A wasted dollar can be earned again. A wasted year leaves a scar. You cannot build freedom with automatic consumption. You cannot build wealth with passive ignorance. You cannot build peace while every decision is a reaction. Silence helps. Silence lets you hear the real cost of your choices. Silence shows you where your life is leaking. Silence exposes the excuses that sounded intelligent in a noisy room. The truth is that discipline is not harshness. Discipline is self-respect in visible form. Discipline is refusing to let short-term feeling govern long-term consequence. Discipline is architecture. It is structure under pressure. It is order inside uncertainty. It is the system that stays when motivation leaves. And motivation always leaves. That is why systems matter. A person without a system negotiates with themselves every day. A person with a system acts before emotion has a vote. That is power. Not loud power, quiet power, durable power, the kind that changes a life without needing applause. You do not need to become someone else. You need to become less careless, less automatic, less available to impulse, less willing to hand your future to temporary comfort. This is where most people stop. They want the feeling of change without the cost. They want the result without the repetition. They want the freedom without the structure. Life does not work that way. Money does not respect intentions. Money respects patterns. Your bank account is not listening to your promises. It is recording your habits. That is good news if you are willing to act. Habits can be rebuilt. Thoughts can be retrained. Fear can be studied. Time can be defended. Waste can be cut. Assets can be accumulated. Margin can be created. Freedom can be constructed. Slowly, quietly, without drama, without performance, without waiting for the perfect month. Not theory, lived experience. The person you become financially is built in ordinary hours, in grocery stores, in late-night decisions, in bank transfers, in what you do after disappointment, in what you refuse after temptation, in what you build when nobody sees it. The truth is that your future is listening to what you repeat. So repeat something better, repeat something stronger, repeat something that leaves evidence. Repeat something your older self will thank you for. Start with one clean move. Protect it. Then protect the next one. Let the architecture grow. Let the noise die. Let the numbers tell the truth. Let the truth change you.